We want to, first of all, thank all of you for taking busy time, we know, to join us here this afternoon. It means a great deal to us. The Missoula Organization of Realtors is very concerned about our community, just as you are. And this will give us both an opportunity to see if we have common goals, and I know we do. But once again, we want to thank you so much for joining us. My name is Perry Dayshaw. I'm chairman of the Government Affairs Committee for the Missoula Organization of Realtors, and I'll be your host today. Ruth writes everything out for me, so it makes it real easy. Welcome.
Without Ruth, he'd be worthless.
Point of order. Point of order. I'll tell my mom about you.
Okay, I'm sorry, Perry. Don't dare tell your mom I mean.
Welcome to the Missoula Organization of Realtors Candidate Interview Forum. I'm pleased that each of you took time out of your busy day to be here, and I thank you for that. I'll be asking each of you 3 questions. To help keep the questions fresh and interesting, we will alternate tables for each question. The first time I read a question, I will provide background information. Each time after that, I'll just read the question. So we kind of give a little background and then the question. And then as we go from candidate to candidate, we'll have a Reader's Digest condensation of the question. We'll start out with a brief introduction from our candidates. And we have this lady here is our clock Nazi. She's also CEO of the Missoula Organization of Realtors, and May will keep us in a timely fashion. So our introductions we wish to keep at 1 minute, and so we'd start left to right. And Mr. Larson, that would be you're my left, so we'd ask you to introduce yourself, please.
That's right. I'm your left. So as the clock started. I'm Cliff Larson, candidate for Senate District 50, resident of Missoula County for 26 years. I've been in private business for about 32 years, recently retired from that. The area in which I practice business was employee benefits, which includes a variety of different kind of subjects, including health insurance, flexible benefits, COBRA administration, hiring, firing, consultation on personnel matters. My special interests are veterans. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Also healthcare issues, and I am strongly interested in the environment and conservation that's practical and realistic. As a person who settled here 26 years ago, I would tell you that I've also developed a few properties. So I think I understand some of the issues that may be facing you. I went through, actually I was the first developer of a property on North Reserve after Carl Tyler. Actually Costco started at the same time I did. I developed a property on Palmer Street. And immediately WGM Corporation built a building beside me on the corner. And then I also developed a property on Santa Fe Court directly behind that. There were all kinds of issues that came up that really educated me, and I'd done some property development before, including easements that no one knew existed, railroad easements and pipelines and so on. I also bought a ranch on Laval Creek, so I have some familiarity with conservation with respect to pioneer properties. I'm struggling right now to find a way to preserve kind of the pioneer aspect of my ranch and still protect the stream side and honor some of the environmental research and science that's being created about how we take care of properties that have farming potential and development potential. So
Thank you, Cliff.
I just got whacked with the Nazi.
Very nice lady, actually.
Yeah,
No cross you. Thank you, Cliff. Candy, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, Candy Matthew Jenkins, Senate District 50. What I can offer you, I guess, is just the resident input, person that's lived in Missoula County over 30 years in Missoula. about 25 years, seen the impacts of the building and everything, and the infill housing and the differences with the subdivision problems, and dealing with state statutes and city wants and annexations and the impact fees and things like that. Just more of a neighborhood perspective, personal perspective. I guess one of my drives to go to the Senate is the last 7 years I've been lobbying, testifying on a different issue, but I've also experienced how the legislature works and how people are invited to the legislature. I'm really big on public input, that people come together and are able to influence what actually goes on, and not just have city or county government dictate what is going to go on for their purposes and not the purposes of the people.
Thank you, Candy. Gordon, would you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you. I'm Representative Gordon Hendrick, House District 14, which is part of Missoula County, part of Sanders County, part of the Flathead Nation, and all of Mineral County. I was mayor for 12 years in the town of Superior. Before that, served one term as councilman. I've been involved in many different volunteer organizations throughout the state, and currently involved with the search and rescue, the fire department, and just retired from the DES, which is the Disaster Emergency Service, as director for Mineral County. And I've just been working my butt off on so many different issues that we don't have enough time to list them all. But I've worked hard for the last 2 sessions for property rights issues, for trying to stop our taxes and from going out of bounds, and trying to work on many different aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gordon. Tim, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Representative Tim Fury. I've been a representative in House District 91 for the last year. I was appointed by the county commissioners when my son got activated in the Army. And so I've been in that position. I served in 2 special sessions, so I have some experience. They call me the incumbent, even though I haven't been elected. I've lived in the Bonner-Piltsville area for 14 years now, almost 15 years. I've been very involved with that community. One of the main issues that I have is what's going to happen to the community around the Stimson plant. What's going to happen with all the growth. When you look at House District 91, it encompasses all the way from the Bitterroot Resort, and it kind of forms a city around Missoula. It includes Canyon River, includes Paws Up Ranch, includes Rock Creek, it's the Milltown Reservoir. There's a ton of economic development going on, but there's also some very difficult times, especially for people in the timber industry. And very proud to be represented there.
Thank you, Tim. Robin?
I'm starting my watch. I'm a 4th generation Montanan, retired educator, 32 years in public education. I taught some people in this room. I'm a small business owner. I'm part owner of the Shack Restaurant, also known as Cafe 222. And I represent House District 92, which is a little bit of eastern downtown Missoula, the old Chipolatos Market, everything east of Monroe and north of the river, the whole Rattlesnake Valley, and then east of town, most of everything north of Highway 200, Tim has south, all the way to Clearwater Junction through Seeley Lake and 4.5 miles north of Condon. I'm gonna stop there because that's just an introduction.
Thank you, Robin. Dick?
I'm Dick Barrett. I moved to Missoula in 1970 to start teaching at the University of Montana. I retired from the university after 37 years last year. I taught economics there. While I've lived in Missoula, I've been involved in a variety of nonprofit organizations. I've been on the board or volunteer at Missoula Planned Parenthood and the Food Bank. And I've been also actively involved in environmental, I guess I'll stop there. That's about my minute, isn't it? I have 20 seconds. Okay, well, no, I'll quit there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Linda?
Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I'm Linda Fry, and I've been a professor at the university for 37 years and a resident of the House District that I'm running for, House District 94. I've spent the entire time within that House District except for a 2.5-year stint as a visitor at the United States Military Academy at West Point. I got involved in the race because I was one of the members that was fighting the Hillview SID. I've also been involved previously in fighting the zoning ordinance that came about a couple of years ago that was needlessly complicated, I thought, and that was ultimately defeated. I think I've been an effective advocate for the neighbors. I hope to be an effective advocate in the future, and I'm concerned about the waivers to the right to protest property tax increases that are increasingly taking over within the town, about permanent levies, and about the abuse of eminent domain. One of the other issues that I think that we should be concerned about is what is called regulatory taking, and I hope we can do that, to address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Well, we'll start with our first question to Table 1. And each of you at Table 1 would respond to this single question. Due to the nature of industry in Montana, there are limited statistics portraying how substantial the impacts of housing functions are on the local economy. When taking into account development, land sales, wholesale goods, etc., the housing market becomes one of the largest industries in our state. Data from the O'Connor Center of the Rocky Mountain West indicates that construction and real estate alone contributes $324 million in salaries to the Missoula County economy in 2006. Yet when considering new revenue streams, the development/growth community is often a focus of taxation. How do you see the role of the housing function as it pertains to the Montana economy in the future? What policies would you support or propose to support that? Cliff, we start with you.
First of all, you have my sympathy as part of the crisis in housing, because there are lots of friends that are impacted in one way or another from the crisis. I think this is an issue that sort of exceeds the authority of our state, but we're in effect result in kind of a trickle-down impact. But I wouldn't dispute the fact that housing plays a huge role in our economy with respect to engineering and construction, employment, infrastructure development, and so on. I think it would be a failure on the part of leadership if we didn't find ways to encourage reasonable property development and reasonable infill where that's appropriate, and to maximize our ability to use the land and the space that we have effectively, while still trying to conserve the natural beauty and appeal of where we live.
Thank you, Cliff. Sandy?
That's a long question.
You want me to read the short?
The last two sentences, please?
How
How
do you see the role of the housing function as it pertains to Montana's economy in the future? And what policies would you support or propose to support that?
Well, the housing industry, as we all know, is huge in the construction and everything, just like Cliff said, with all the different layers that it affects, down to the city planners and things like that, permitting and everything. Goes into the coffers of government. What I see now, at least locally, I'm not, and I know Bozeman has been building. I was just listening to something this morning about that, and I think that we have a surplus of housing. Actually, I really see that in the city, we have a surplus here. I mean, when I open the Sunday paper and there are just pages and pages of houses, that tells me that somehow, we're not getting the people in the income brackets to fill it. So then that bodes a question, why aren't we? And that's because of the different economic structure we have now. And we don't have the forest and mineral industries going like they used to. And so there's less people in that bracket to sell the bigger houses. to go out and buy a $250,000 house, you know, on a minimum wage or a beginning wage for someone that's just gotten out of college, if they can secure a job here, just makes it really difficult. And then now, as taxpayers, we're going to foot the bill for the, you know, Sallie Mae and Freddie Mac, and things just aren't well economically. And I see that we need to take a look at our housing inventory so we're not overbuilding what's coming to us. And we have a lot of, not just the infill. I'm sorry, I don't know what yellow means.
Pretty soon you have to stop.
Oh, okay.
Go through the stoplight.
I understand caution, but I didn't know there was a color code right now. And sorry about that. What I would hope that we would come to less stringent building requirements, not safety requirements, but the permitting process and things like that, and start providing for what the people that we have and trying to get them into situations to fill those houses. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Candy. Our next question is to Table 2. Numerous local communities have imposed or are considering imposing various types of impact fees on new residential and commercial growth. In almost every case, these fees are not in compliance with statutory requirements in the Impact Fee Enabling Act of 2005. These requirements were put into place to, first, ensure the local governments are complying with strict federal requirements for the imposition of impact fees, and second, ensure that the development is paying for no more or less than its actual impact on the cost of local services. Various groups will attempt to make it easier for local governments to impose impact fees on new growth that will make it even harder for Montana workforce to become homeowners. What do you consider to be the pros and cons of impact fees? How would you feel about making them easier for local governments to impose? Gordon?
Okay, first off, impact fee. To me, the word fee means taxes. Taxes are fees, fees are taxes. So, right off the bat, impact fees sends up a red flag to me. Although, especially in the communities where I'm from, we're pretty devastated for as far as employment is concerned. And we see new development coming into our communities. But the impact that I see is not really that big so far, except for economy-wise. We're actually gaining some positions for our locals to be able to help build. But there are some needs for impact fees, but they have to be within a limit that they can't, just because a new group comes in and they think they got more money, they're going to push more impact fees towards this group. They're not equal, and so we're having that issue right now in Mineral County, and they've had several meetings on it, and I've been attending, watching how this unfolds. And so that it's kind of the developers against the planners. And it's been kind of interesting to see how this goes. So I guess my final end is I don't believe in any more new taxes, pure and simple.
Thank you, Gordon. Tim?
You know, I saw that question, your questionnaire. There are pros and cons to impact fees. You know, new businesses, new homes coming into an area and using up some of the resources. I guess I understand there should be some type of impact fee. It can be a good thing to build the community, but boy, I attended Director Bucks's real estate seminar that he had here in Missoula, and impact fees was probably the #1 issue of how it's just killing the developer, how it's killing the raising the price of single-family homes, and then also delaying the length of being able to build these homes and businesses. So I just wish there were some way of providing, you know, a better way of, you know, having some kind of fees, because there is an impact, but yet not disabling the developer and making the homes so unaffordable. So kind of as a new guy, just will tell you that I would be willing to listen to ideas on both sides and try and come up with some kind of compromise and make it more affordable for people to be able to buy homes and less time to build those homes or those businesses.
Thank you, Tim. Table 3. With increasing growth rates in various communities in Montana, water quantity and quality issues are becoming a major focus of policymakers. Even though research shows that residential development has minimal impact on water resources, the process required to obtain a water right permit for new homeowners and business have become very difficult and costly recently. How would you recommend managing Montana's water resources so that our growing communities have access to clean drinking water?
Well, we will be fighting wars over water for the rest of our lives, I think, and it's maybe one of our most precious commodities in Montana. So there may not be another more important issue, and our water rights have been a mess ever since the '72 Constitution required adjudication of all existing water rights, and we're getting close to getting that done thanks to the action of the '05 legislature. All our basins are closed. There's no new water, and climate change, there'll probably be less. So we have to manage it very carefully. And as somebody who grew up in Montana, I never used to see what you would call a big development, the kind we see now, but we see proposals for 200, 300 unit subdivisions. And if you have something like that, 200 yards from the Clark Fork River, and somebody doesn't do a community water supply, which is how it's properly done, and tries to do 300 exempt wells, science tells us that there will be an impact. So the job of a legislature is to use, first of all, good science, not emotion. Let's find out exactly what will happen. Not because it'll disrupt your view or make you mad at your neighbor, but what will actually happen if 300 homes go in? How is it best done? And so at the state level, our job is to make sure that you have practical, common sense regulations that don't change every 2 years. Right now, with our 2-year legislature, well, we change too often. I think the realtors need to get together and get an ideal set of laws and work with all of us over a 2-year period and get a nice common sense set that we can predict. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Dick?
It's hard to improve on Robin's answer in a way because it makes a lot of sense. And the fundamental problem, of course, is that you can't create water out of whole cloth. And as we grow, and Western Montana in particular is growing very rapidly, one of the fastest growing areas of the country, actually, there just is going to be increasing demand for water and increasing competition for water. And frankly, it's irreconcilable. I mean, you can't make more water to get everybody happy. And you could try and do the kinds of things that have been done, for example, in Nevada, where Las Vegas pumps in water from very distant points, but that's been a big problem as well. So ultimately, I think what you need is a process to reconcile the kinds of claims that are being made on water, the conflicting claims that everybody has a valid claim on it in one way or another. To reconcile, to have a process that can reconcile those claims with a minimum of conflict and a maximum of efficiency, and based, as Robin says, on good science.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you for joining us, Dave. The question for Table 4 was a question that we had asked Table 1, and we'll just rotate through. Dave, real quick, introduce yourself, and then if you would, how do you see the role of housing function as it pertains to Montana's economy in the future, and what policies would you support or propose to support that?
Thanks. I'll just take a minute to introduce myself. I'm Dave McAlpin. I represent House District 94. I'm just finishing my 2nd term there and running for my 3rd term. My background is as a community advocate. Presently, I run the CASA organization, Court-Appointed Special Advocates. But I have a fairly extensive background in public policy, having worked for Senator Baucus, Congressman Williams, the Montana Supreme Court, and other organizations. My last direct contact with the Realtors was working with Colin on the open space bond, which I managed as a consultant, the campaign to support the bond for open space in Missoula. Presently, I serve as the minority whip in the House, one of 2 whips. I've been elected by my caucus to serve that role. We had a challenging session with a very tightly divided House, and I look forward to continuing to provide the leadership that I've been able to provide in the next session. With regard to housing, I do think that's an important issue. I think it's probably the most up-and-coming issue that we're going to see. When I attended the Mayor's Housing Forum meeting, an open discussion in the community, and when you see that teachers and firefighters are not able to afford to live in Missoula who work here, we have a problem that needs to be addressed. I'm willing to keep all the options open on solutions, including impact fees. Last session, last time around in the campaigns, we had a tavern owners forum. And the first question asked was, are you willing to support a tax increase for alcohol? And so I wouldn't come into that group or this group and say absolutely not to anything. I would consider improving our impact fee system. I would consider resources to help us with water. And I think we have a real challenge with the limited space in Missoula for housing to provide enough housing to the blue-collar workers that live here. Thanks.
Linda?
Thank you. I think that housing is a critical element in the Missoula economy. And I guess one of the things that would concern me would be that Missoula would become a town for either the very rich or the very poor. And I think we've got to work actively against that. So we have to work to provide housing, especially for what you might call the middle-class people or individuals who are being priced out of the market. I am concerned, though, that there seems to be a pressure for infill in the neighborhoods, and I think that that should be fought in some respects unless the neighbors are actively involved in it, and to be sure that it does not take down property rights within the area or property valuations. So there has to be active consideration. And I'm also concerned about the fact that this movement towards infill in some of the neighborhoods may override zoning ordinances and may override hillside limitations, which we have fought hard to obtain. So I do realize the critical nature of it and the importance of housing in our community.
Thank you, Linda. Back to table 1. What do you consider to be the pros and cons of impact fees? How would you feel about making them easier for local governments to impose?
Tough question. Before I address that, haven't lived in Montana as long as I have now. I've heard a few Montana proverbs, and with respect to water, when I bought my ranch on LaValle Creek, the realtor who was involved in advising me said, just remember, in Montana, whiskey's for drinking and water's for shooting. And I've had trouble with 2 neighbors already with respect to water rights, so believe me, I understand to some extent how tedious that problem can be. With respect to impact fees, I think I've heard some very good answers, and my answer would be that when development takes place, there are impacts on the property. I developed 2 office buildings on, as I said, on Santa Fe Court and on Palmer Street, and that was before the term impact fees really became so common in our vocabulary, but we still had fees. So the fees that we had, as you are well aware, were the development costs. So much per toilet in each building, et cetera, on commercial development. So I'm familiar with that, and I don't object to the fact that there are impact fees that are reasonable. Would I support increasing those fees or taxes, I think was the term my colleague here suggested? No. I think that it's got to be reasonable so property development can take place, but I think we still have to address the fact that there are impacts. We have to reasonably find solutions to them.
Thank you, Cliff. Candy?
Boy, I did a couple of thoughts on that. I'm not for impact fees. I have to agree with Gordon. They are taxes, but they're a tax on living as a human being because it affects every human being in trying to get a home or trying to make a place in society when you keep feeing and permitting and everything like that. you get taxed out of existence. And I think that when those there is an impact to the community, and that impact will be in the tax base itself and the growth eventually. And cities and counties have to realize that instead of making it so unaffordable for people, you have your house insurance, you have your power bills, all these things that are added on into home ownership, maintenance and everything, that when you, on the onset, you're paying so much more because the developer himself ended up having to pay so much more. It's a tax. I don't care what anybody calls it, it's a tax. And I don't want to see anybody have more lenient rules to be able to tax us in any way, shape, or form more. It's hard enough to live in Missoula with the taxes that have gone up, and with mayor saying that they need 2 cents more for gas. I mean, it's good grief. They have funding for streets and roads and stuff. Let's do some aggressive oversight and see what's gone on there to spend that money. We have to look at that. Like I said, I've been in Helena now for the last almost 7 years, and I'll tell you one thing, if there's anything out there, it's lack of oversight and expenditure of taxpayer funds.
Thank you, Ken. Next question to Table 2. How would you recommend managing Montana's water resources so that our growing communities have access to clean drinking water?
Another loaded question. Again, as he has said, water's for fighting and whiskey's for drinking. But, what affects the larger communities, upstream, we have to think about what happens to these smaller communities. And I'm in the smaller community where we haven't had the growth situation as much as Missoula and the surrounding areas have had. So we haven't had the water issues per se to worry about development. But I think I'm on the Department of Natural Resources Committee, and we've been working on water rights issues. And so far, nothing has really come to a good point for either side. So I think that we need to have cooler heads prevail. I think the real estate department really needs to be involved in on this, the same as the agricultural department. We need to come together with a workable solution that we can show the rest of the United States that we can come to some type of an agreement. So before I make any comments about how I'm going to come across with this, is that I believe that the private property rights issues are a major concern here, and so I would go accordingly.
Tim?
Thank you. I have some recent experience in this. I live in Bonner with the Milltown Reservoir being removed and the dam being pulled out. There have been a number of water issues, and science is good and bad, and they projected that there might be 50 wells that would go dry or need some kind of work, and I think right now it's about 82 wells that have either need to be replaced or the pumps dropped or a filter put on. Well, I've been to a number of meetings, and that we learned that it's not just because the river was drawn down, it's because of the use at certain times of year. It's the fact that we've been through a pretty rough drought period over the last 7 to 10 years. We really haven't had a lot of water to replenish what we've got. And so I think we're learning more and more about local wells and water. Drinking water is extremely important. I also helped manage a ranch out in Frenchtown for Opportunity Resources. Had to go through the permitting process, and boy, we wanted to use more than 35 gallons, but then realized that it's a tremendous effort and a lot of cost to go through that, so we stuck with the 35 gallons. I'm just, again, very open to what we can do to make water rights and water use and clean drinking water a key issue and a key right.
Thank you, Tim. Table 3, your question is, how do you see the role of housing function as it pertains to Montana's economy in the future? And what policies would you support or propose to support that? Robin?
I'm the last generation of high school teachers at Hellgate that could live close to the school. I currently live 2.5 blocks from Hellgate. My wife still teaches there. None of the young teachers live near Hellgate High School. They commute from further out where they could get cheaper housing. All across the West, in the popular places, we're seeing communities, especially the popular ones, struggling to find teachers, firefighters, policemen. And if we don't deal with that as communities and as a state, we're going to cease to grow in a positive way. Affordable housing is not my specialty, but many of my colleagues are. We have organizations in Missoula such as Homeward. At the state level, we can develop various programs that make it possible for young people or low-income people to get into affordable housing. We have organizations that build houses, but currently I would say not enough. It's got to be one of our keys. We can also use tax incentives, and I would support that. It's certainly an important issue.
Thank you, Robin. Dick?
Most of the people answering this question have addressed the question of affordable housing, but I think the question itself actually goes to the role of housing in the state's economy. But I'll say, before I answer that latter part, I will say that I agree with the comments that have been made that really the solution for affordable housing, and I think Linda's right, that affordable housing is an issue that's particularly faced by moderate and low income families. And the solution really has to lie in the creation of more supply. I mean, just giving those people more income, for example, if that were possible, which I don't think it is, just giving those people more income wouldn't solve the problem of availability of housing. You got to have more housing and give them the means to buy the houses, but you got to have more houses for them. So I mean, that's certainly true. As far as the role of housing in the economy, or construction, more broadly speaking, in the Montana economy, it is obviously an important sector of the economy. I do not think, as a general strategy, the state should try to pick kind of winners, winning sectors, and treat them differentially because they think that those are the things that are going to drive the process forward. I tend to favor a kind of a even playing field approach to Montana's various industries, including housing. I'll also say that just as a technical matter, the housing industry's role in the economy is such that it can actually contribute to the instability. It feeds rapid growth, but it's also one of the sensitive sectors that tends to turn around pretty fast when growth stops or slows down.
Thank you, Dave. Table 4. What do you consider to be the pros and cons of impact fees? And how would you feel about making them easier for local governments to impose?
I think the pro of impact fee is that there seems to provide a link between the use or the need of those revenues and the actual on-the-ground application. In other words, if I see that development going in and they need streets, and I've had streets and sidewalks for decades, I'd be more comfortable with them getting an impact fee. And I understand fully that that drives the end cost of housing. But I think that it goes to the broader question of tax fairness. I think whenever you do tax policy, and I've been on the tax committee for 2 sessions now, you have to have some sort of logical nexus between the tax and the use. So to me, it seems logical that an impact fee is appropriate to help build infrastructure for that particular neighborhood or community. Obviously, the con is that it drives the cost of housing up. I think we need to work hard to address those problems as well. One thing we could do is put more dollars into the Affordable Housing Trust that's administered by the Montana Department of Housing. And that usually runs out of money very early in the year, and that's a pretty fair way to allow basically a subsidy to homeowners. So I would say those are the basics. Thanks.
Linda?
Well, I'm rather critical about impact fees because I think that the question as it's addressed in isolation isn't too informative, because I think you'd have to assess what exactly the cost of the impact fees would be. You have to recognize that that would be passed on to the consumer, and that would be a cost to raise, that would in effect be a raise in the price of housing. I think in some cases that impact fees become a regulatory taking, which we should oppose. There are also some things to be offset against it, and that is I'm opposed to impact fees where they would override statutory limitations, which I think they may very well do. On the other hand, there probably should be some assessment of the actual cost of the housing that reflects infrastructure development, and I think we do need to get a better handle on that. I'm just not sure that impact fees are the best way to do it.
Okay. Back to table 1. How would you recommend managing Montana's water resources so that our growing communities have access to clean drinking water?
I think Robin nailed the question pretty well. I think for development projects, having common water systems makes a lot of sense. I'm on the Airport Authority Board. I've been a commissioner on that board for 9 years. And one of the issues we had in expanding our capability for the Forest Service was pushing a water line out to the development the Forest Service operates when we're building a new hangar. The Airport Authority actually built that hangar for the Forest Service. We had to put a new water main in, and I learned a lot about water use and water rights in that process. We spent somewhere around $120,000 of our money to subsidize water company to actually push the line out that far. We actually replaced some of the wells we had on the airport because we were depleting some of the subsurface waters there. So our alternative to drilling more wells was to actually spend this money on pushing the water line out. One of the secondary benefits was they pushed the water line up Butler Creek, so to the point, I think it's called West Point. We have an engineer here that's recognizing that development. So we now have a water main all the way out to basically Butler Creek where it goes under the freeway. So I think where we can have common water supplies and manage those instead of these excessive individual wells that are being drilled is one solution. Another example of a common water supply is the Y development. A recent, I just got whacked by the Nazi. There's a big development going into the Y. It's going to require a whole lot of water, and they build a big well near there.
Candy?
Which I support.
Well, I'm going to have to admit, this is way out of my league as far as knowing how to deal with it, the water supply. I know that we have the responsibility for any building that we do that people have clean water, but finding out how to do that, I'm not real good on. But I do know that important for me would be, I think somebody mentioned the science of it. Are we having accurate science on what our capacities are in water, what our aquifer is, what water do we have available to push uphill, where are wells, where have wells been? I know there were problems in out Mullen Road out by Elmira Estates with that division years and years ago. The people that, older people in the area kept on saying you're going to have a water problem with Grant Creek there's going to be flooding, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. And they ended up, I think, switching Grant Creek around and stuff. So there has to be some kind of a real science. Are these people always going to have water? Are they going to have flooding? Is it going to be drinkable water? I have problems like with the sewage treatment plant here in Missoula. I don't think they're doing quite their job, and you're putting too much on it. And are we putting too much demand on our water supply in certain areas where we have to pipe it out to? Things like that. I guess I'd have to do a lot more investigation, but I think that science, the actual science of it, is beneficial and not just a feel-good effect of it.
Thank you. Table 2. How do you see the role of housing function as it pertains to Montana's economy in the future? And what policies would you support or propose to support that?
Okay, first of all, I think if I was a developer, I would take a look at the area first. And the first thing that I would look at is to see what the economy is like. what drives that community? What are the wages like? What is the mainstay of employment for the community? And then I would build accordingly for affordable housing according to the economy. I'd always support the housing industry as long as they've done their homework and that they're adding to the economy and not overtaxing the citizens that have been there for years and years. The situation I see with the impact fee that goes along with this is that when they say that impact fees are going to overtax the houses, well, in a way it does, because what happens if you make the houses so unaffordable, and when people from other states come in and buy that house, then your house has gone up in value also. So that means your taxes are going to increase. So we have to be careful with that. The legislation that I would work with is something that would come up equally for the area, and not one package works for all of Montana, because we have so many different areas of Montana. We have the agriculture, we have the mining, we have the university towns, and we have the outlying frontier areas. So we all have to work together to come up with something. And so far it hasn't come about yet.
Thank you. Tim?
Well, I do see housing as a major role in the Montana economy and the Missoula economy. I also live in House District 91, and that is truly a district that has affordable housing. And I do see that there's going to be an impact with all the new growth on homes that are affordable. Bitterroot Resort has proposed 4,000 homes. We have the Canyon River Resort. We have things happening in Rock Creek. If you go through East Missoula, which is in my district, you see a lot of new homes, and they look great, and it's been great for the community. There's affordable housing that's coming in that has busing that's nearby. It's close for university students. So there's some good things that are happening. I think we have to be careful. There are also 30% of the homes in my district are trailer houses. And that's affordable housing. And I think we just need to be careful to think that, oh, we should replace those because those are terrible neighborhoods or those are terrible places for people to live. But if we replace them with something that's not attainable for the folks that live there, then that's not going to help our economy, and that's not going to help the families in my district and in the Missoula area. So I think we just need to be careful and have planned growth and listen to all sides of the issue.
Thank you. Table 3. What do you consider to be the pros and cons of impact fees? And how would you feel about making them easier for local governments to impose?
Your question asks, would I favor making it easier for a government to impose it?
Yes.
I'd be leery of making it easier for a local government to impose them. They can impose them now. We have to strike a delicate balance between occasional impact fees when appropriate and oversight. How does the local government spend the money that it collects? As we have more development in places like Western Montana, I think there will be some places where impact fees, if they're reasonable, are appropriate. But some local governments go crazy, and if it's too easy to levy a 2% impact fee, you're in danger of doing a lot of the negatives, raising the costs, spending the money unwisely. So pros and cons, yes, carefully done, with good data. What is the impact of this going to be? What kind of people are going to buy this? We can find that out. You people are the experts. You know what kind of people are going to buy this. If you've got a gated community that's going to be primarily retirees, there's not going to be much impact on the schools. No kids are going to attend the school nearby. So it depends on the data. And if we just willy-nilly say impact fee, development, we're going to do it wrong. So I always advocate common sense, good data.
Dick?
As far as making it easier, I guess I don't really know exactly what would be involved with that. That part of the question is hard to answer, but let me do the pros and cons thing. First of all, I would say that if you have an impact fee, I would agree with Robin that it has to be rationally and realistically related to the actual costs that are being imposed. There's no point in, you shouldn't use impact fees as a local government cash cow. Oh, here's the development. So it should be rationally related to the actual costs that are being imposed. Then what are the pros of that? Well, it provides the means for financing, meeting those costs, as Dave has mentioned, in an equitable way. And as you know, you may know that economists always like to say that incentives matter. I think that's another pro. It creates an incentive to a developer to examine the kinds of impacts that are being created and to minimize those impacts when there's a better way to do that than paying the impact fee. So economists like those kinds of price type of things going on. I think there is a difference between a fee and a tax. It shouldn't be treated as a tax. It should be treated as a fee or a price for doing business. The con, of course, is that it does raise the cost. It ultimately raises the price of the house, as Linda has said. Again, as an economist, I'm going to say, and that's what it should do. If you're buying a house that is costly to the community in some way, you should bear that cost. On the affordability issue, I agree with Dave. Rather than addressing the question of affordability by scrapping impact fees and getting rid of those incentive mechanisms and so forth, which I think we do want, I believe that we should have transparent and direct and obvious subsidies for housing affordability at the low end of the house.
Okay, table 4. How would you recommend managing Montana's water resources so that our growing communities have access to clean drinking water?
I think we have to resolve a couple outstanding issues, such as the Flathead Water Compact with the Flathead Nation. That is still outstanding. We probably have another 2 years to address that, to quantify those rights on the reservation. We know through litigation that we are required to do that. We need to get on with it, get it done. We have some legislative members of that commission that are pushing that ahead. And I think within 2 years, probably by the end of next cycle, we can have that one done and have a better understanding of the quantity at risk here. On the local level here in Missoula, I just think that the fewer individual wells we drill, the more water systems we use instead, the better off we are in protecting the aquifer, which is one of the few resources here in Missoula that we really can't, once we damage that, there's no going back. So those are the 2 items I would suggest in protecting our water quality.
Linda?
I would agree that probably the issue of in the future, by the way, is water imprints. I think that's going to be even more important than carbon imprints, especially in the West and to our community. I think that the water resource issue could be addressed by, again, dealing with the larger watershed issue. I would agree with our first speaker that I think that the Y development proceeded in a good way with those, and they proceeded by finding out the impact within the larger watershed before they proceeded. And again, it was a community development. I am a little concerned, though, by the recent attempts to use water as a subterfuge to drag individuals through needless delays and process permits. And I think that that should be avoided. We need to expedite the process, cut the red tape, and try to evaluate it fairly.
Thank you, Linda. We want to thank you all for coming and joining us this afternoon. At this point, we'll give each of you a brief closing statement. Did I go through everything right, Dave? It's been an honor getting to know each of you, and we look forward to visiting and knowing you more in the future. We'll start on the right this time with your closing statement. So, Linda?
Again, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me. And I think one of the things that's going to be concerning us in the future, again, is this larger urban plan district that's coming up. And again, I would say that I think we should be concerned about not jeopardizing current zoning regulations and about involvement of the neighborhoods. And and again, about protecting the things that we have fought so hard for, like hillside limitations and limitations on certain districts. I'm extremely concerned, for example, about the university district and some of those districts, that infill is jeopardizing property valuations in the area, and it's also jeopardizing, in some respects, the sense of neighborhood. I would hope that we would avoid this, and again, my last point would be, is I hope that we would move to eliminate those waivers by which property owners and developers have to waive the rights on the property in perpetuity to protest any kind of SIDs or tax increases. This is both, to me, unconstitutional, and by the way, it eliminates legislative intent. I think we should be aware of this and fight this with our very souls. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you. I just want to give you some advice to start off, not because I'm saged and wise, but because it's something I've observed in the 20 years I've worked at the legislature. Your job isn't to come here and decide that someone agrees with all of your points. I think your job is to choose someone who goes to Helena, who is reasonable and can work with folks from all different sides of the aisle in different parts of Montana. I think I've shown I could do that over the years that I've represented this district. And I actually can give you tangible examples of doing that. In '05 with Senator Cocciarella, I passed a bill and I managed it on the House floor, which required local zoning to be taken in consideration whenever infill is discussed. And that is to let that local neighborhood decide about their character before infill could be implemented. And another example is in the last session when I was the sponsor of the local option tax, which in other words is a sales tax. It's when a lot of the questions we asked and answered today had to do with funding and scarce resources. And I think one of the few solutions offered is to look at different options. In this case, I sponsored the local option tax. Didn't pass, unfortunately, but it would have given us another option. And I think those are the sorts of skills that I could continue to bring to this office. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Dick?
Well, I want to thank you too for the opportunity for being here with you today. I enjoyed it. I see Hamilton an awful lot, and I was kind of hoping to see my opponent here. Yeah, he's not here, so but I do thank you, and I guess I would. The only thing I would say to you is that I would bring to the job of being a legislator 37 years of academic and public work in the areas of public policy, particularly around economic development and environment in Montana and the Mountain West. And a lot of experience too as in dealing with controversy and conflict and negotiation. I'm a good listener. I believe strongly in respecting whatever it is that somebody tells you is on their mind, even if you don't agree with it. I believe that that's the way to approach conflict, through respect and accepting from the get-go the legitimacy of everyone's interests.
Robin?
Thank you. I'm proud to represent a lot of progressive thinking legislators in the Rattlesnake, which is the heart of my district. Let me just give you an example. Last session I carried a bill, and I believe it's House Bill 49, and I worked closely with Harold Blatty of the Association of Counties. Some of you may know him. And it called for an interim study committee of all our special interest districts: fire, tax, sewer, airport. The regulations across Montana are a mess. And the study is nearing its completion, and you will see the results of that and some suggestions for legislation at our next meeting in September. It had broad bipartisan support. I got it through the House and the Senate. The governor signed it, and I think it's going to do a lot of good for Montana and make a lot of sense for a lot of people in the county governments, as well as developers and realtors, to make more sense of the regulations and have a more uniform system.
Tim?
Well, I believe in this community, and I'm willing to work hard for not only House District 91, but Missoula and the whole state. In the 1 year that I've been a representative, it's truly been an honor and quite an education, believe me. That's just been phenomenal. I work for Opportunity Resources. We're about the 12th largest employer in Missoula County. I've been a part of the University of Montana Foundation and have been able to help bring in millions of dollars into this community from outside. And I've also been active with Camp Make a Dream and helped to build a $4 million facility for kids with cancer. So a lot of not-for-profit experience and experience working with you, with the chamber, with realtors, with businesses, and just having a good relationship. So I'll share with you, I'll go to Helena with a pretty open mind. I don't have any axes to grind. I don't have any big issues. Of course, I will work for disability rights because that's a big part of my life. But I'm going to go there able to listen and able to compromise and help get some things done.
Gordon?
Thank you again for inviting us here. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to serve the last 2 terms as a legislator. I not only represent House District 14, but I have had the privilege to represent all of Montana to make sure that our Montana State Constitution stays intact, that there's no changes to it, that we abide by this Constitution. I've also had the privilege to introduce legislation for the Great Tsunami, which is one of the most important tsunamis that we've had affect the state of Montana. We are all growing older, and we will be part of that tsunami if we're not there already. I am. But I feel that some of the big issues that are hitting the rural parts of Montana, as we're considered the frontier communities, is home health care. So I've been working with the public health nurse in our district and also in several other districts, working together with some form of legislation that would help our home health care patients, because let's face it, with the price of fuel and the taxes going up out of sight, these people aren't going to be able to afford to go out and get this home health care. And I've noticed that a lot of the programs have been cut because they don't want to drive out to service our rural areas. Education is another factor. I've had the privilege to work with the last 12 years as a full-time volunteer teacher. I'll start again on my 13th year in September. Those are just several of the issues that I work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Candy?
Well, thank you for inviting us, and I've learned a lot about the other candidates and things. I think everybody has put forth some really nice, valid issues. And my concern is definitely constitutional limitation of government, and that property ownership is the key to our freedom as a people and individuals. And that I'm more concerned at where our state is going. I think that locally, I felt that we've developed a lot of different types of industries in turn from our resources and stuff, but industries that put us at the behest and benefit of federal regulations instead of our own communities coming up with what's good for our communities. I was able to get some information from a website called usspending.gov. In 2007, the state of Montana received, I guess this is billions, I can't even say it, 147375094 period, billions of dollars. And that was down from 7 billions of dollars. So we have some tough roads ahead, and we've become such a welfare state that I think to promote the aspects of economics within the state, going back to resources and things, makes everything fall in line, affordability and how communities address that. So that's something I'm really concerned about, and I hope to do your bidding and hear your opinions as individuals to make our state a lot more solid, I guess you want to say, economically for the people here.
Thank you. Cliff?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I do recognize a few of the faces here in the crowd. I think I saw some of you at the meeting that Dan Bucks from the Department of Revenue staged out at the Wingate a couple of months ago on reassessment of property taxes. And, there are a lot of huge issues that are facing us in this next legislature. And what I would do is invite you to go to my website to learn more about me. In 1 minute, I can't tell you very much, but I have been an educator at 2 different universities. I've started 7 successful businesses. I've been in business for 32 years, and I've also done property development, as I mentioned. But I think it's an honorable achievement to become a legislator, especially in a state like Montana, where it seems like we really, truly love our place. I chose to live here intentionally. I traveled throughout Montana looking for the place to live long ago, and when I finally was able to come here, I've sunk my roots in very deep. Been involved in public service here on many boards and commissions, and some appointments from the governor's office. But what I would leave you with is that I think that solutions are a combination of cooperation, negotiation, and compromise. And that's what I vow to do when I get to the legislature, and I fully intend to be there and represent you as well as all the other Missoulians. Thank you very much.
Well, again, we want to thank you all, and I think you deserve a good round of applause from the Organization of Realtors here in Missoula, and thank you so much.